Billionaire Love Stories. 3 weeks ago, I sat in a courtroom and signed away everything I had. The house. Both cars. The company. All of it. My lawyer grabbed my arm before I put pen to paper and whispered, "Vivienne, please. You do not have to do this." My mother-in-law was already smirking from the gallery like she had front row seats to the best show of her life. Marcus's girlfriend, 27 years old, was literally taking a selfie right there in the courtroom. An actual selfie. And Marcus, the man I had spent 8 years building a life with, was smiling the way people smile when they think they have already won. That smile lasted exactly 47 seconds. Because 47 seconds later, his lawyer finished reading the final clause in our agreement. And I watched that smile fall off his face like it had never been there at all. But before I tell you what was on page 47, I want to take a breath and ask you something first. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because I need this story to travel. I need it to reach the woman who is sitting in a house that doesn't feel like hers anymore. I need it to reach the person who has been told so many times that they don't understand money, don't understand business, don't understand anything, that they have started to believe it. I believed it once. I don't anymore. My name is Vivienne Hartley. I am 34 years old. I am a trained accountant. And this is the story of how I spent 3 years being completely invisible to my husband, while I quietly built the case that would change both of our lives forever. Let me take you back. 8 years of marriage. From the outside, Marcus and I had the kind of life people post about and secretly envy. A 5-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Houston that we absolutely did not need. A Porsche in the garage for him. A 12-year-old Honda Accord for me, which tells you everything you need to know about how he saw us. Dinner parties where Marcus held court at the head of the table, while I refilled wine glasses and smiled at the right moments. The perfect picture. Until you looked closely enough to see the cracks. Marcus controlled every dollar from the very beginning. "I'll handle the money, you handle the house," he told me on our honeymoon. And I, young and in love and terrified of becoming my parents who had screamed at each other about bills for 15 years, I agreed. Before our son Eli was born, I was a senior accountant at a firm downtown. I was good at it. Numbers had always made sense to me in a way that people sometimes didn't. But when I got pregnant, Marcus sat me down with that calm, reasonable tone he used when he had already made a decision and just needed me to agree to it. The baby needs his mother at home. I make enough for both of us. So I quit. Traded client meetings for playgroups. And when Eli started kindergarten and I picked up part-time remote accounting work to keep my skills sharp, Marcus barely registered it. To him, I was furniture. Useful. Present. Easy to overlook. He would check his Rolex, a gift to himself for closing some deal, and announce that investor dinners would run late. His home office stayed locked. Credit card statements went to his email. I had a supplementary card with a modest limit. What I did not know yet, but would very soon discover, was that the Rolex was bought on credit. And his empire was built entirely on sand. Eli changed me in ways I still don't have words for. He came into the world 6 years ago with Marcus's dark hair and my stubborn chin. And from the moment the nurse placed him in my arms, I understood a kind of love I had never known existed. Fierce. Unconditional. The kind that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning wondering if you are doing enough, being enough. Marcus saw Eli differently. Our son was a talking point, not a relationship. Something to mention at business dinners. My boy is already showing an interest in real estate, can you believe it? But never something to nurture, to show up for, to actually love out loud. He missed Eli's first steps because of a conference call. Missed his first word because he was traveling. Missed every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every bedtime story. I remember one evening about a year before everything unraveled. Eli had been waiting by the front window for 2 hours, his favorite picture book pressed against his chest. He looked at me with those huge hopeful eyes and said, "Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?" He said he'd read to me tonight. I texted Marcus. No response. Called. Voicemail. Eli fell asleep on the couch still holding that book. When Marcus finally walked in at 11, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't his usual, I asked if he'd forgotten his promise. He barely looked up from his phone. "I'm building a future for this family, Vivienne. Eli will understand when he's older. But I saw my son's face the next morning when he realized Daddy had come and gone without even saying goodnight. Something shifted in me that night. Something quiet and permanent. And that was before I found the drawer. The night everything changed, I wasn't even looking for the truth. I was looking for Eli's passport for a school trip. Marcus had left his home office unlocked for once, and I found the passport right where he said it would be. But as I pulled it out, my hand brushed against a folder I'd never seen before. The return address on the top envelope stopped me cold. First National Bank. Final notice. Stamped in red. My accountant's brain moved faster than my heart could stop it. I opened the envelope. 90 days past due. $340,000 outstanding on a commercial property loan. I opened another. Delinquent account. Immediate action required. Then another. And another. And a letter from a collection agency I'd never heard of. By the time I finished going through that drawer, my hands were trembling. Not from fear. From the sheer impossible mathematics of what I was looking at. Marcus's empire was hemorrhaging money. The properties he bragged about at parties were underwater. The company that was supposed to be our retirement was drowning in over $2 million in debt. And he had never said a single word to me. I sat in his leather chair for a long time. Papers spread around me like evidence at a crime scene. And then I did something that surprised even myself. I took out my phone. Photographed every single document. Timestamp dated crystal clear. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, turned off the light and walked out. I didn't sleep that night. But I wasn't scared. I was calculating. This is just the beginning. Because what I built from that moment in that locked office took 3 years of silence, patience, and absolute precision. And it all came together in a courtroom where a man with a Mont Blanc pen signed away his own future in 47 seconds. The morning after I found the drawer, I called the one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. My college roommate Priya. She worked at a regional bank and had always had the clearest eyes of anyone I knew. She was also the only person who had ever looked at Marcus and said, "I don't know, Viv. Something about him feels calculated." I should have listened to her years earlier. I was listening now. "I need to understand what debts might be attached to my name as a spouse," I told her. Priya didn't ask why. She just said, "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring your ID." What I learned over the following weeks confirmed my worst fears and revealed something I had not expected. Most of the debt was in Marcus's name or tied to his company. But he had taken out 2 loans using both our names without my knowledge. Forged my signature or used an electronic copy I had never authorized. Priya set the papers down and looked at me across her desk. "Vivienne, this is fraud. You could report him." "Not yet." I folded the copies she had made and slipped them into my bag. "I need the full picture first." And so began my 3-year education in financial survival. I opened a savings account at a bank Marcus had no connection to. Every month I funneled what I could from my part-time work. 200 here. 300 there. I documented everything. Saved every email, every statement, every scrap of evidence that came my way. Priya checked in periodically. The debt's growing, Vivienne, not shrinking. I wasn't surprised. But I was ready. Marcus, meanwhile, had absolutely no idea his wife was watching and waiting. A year before the final hearing, Marcus started coming home smelling like someone else. It wasn't obvious at first. A hint of perfume that wasn't mine. A text notification silenced too quickly. Business trips that seemed to multiply overnight. But I had spent 3 years training myself to notice everything. And Marcus had grown careless with a woman he considered beneath his attention. The late nights became later. The investor dinners more frequent. He upgraded his wardrobe. $3,000 suits charged to credit cards that were already at their limits. Meanwhile, I was still wearing dresses from 5 years ago. "You should put more effort into your appearance," he told me one evening, adjusting his new silk tie in the hallway mirror. "Cassidy, she's a new business associate. She always looks put together." Cassidy, the name he said too casually too often. I didn't confront him. I just filed it away. One night Marcus left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. The screen lit up. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear the gray tie. I love it on you." I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. That same week I noticed him deleting his browsing history, changing passwords, making calls from the garage. But here is what Marcus never understood about me. I wasn't plotting revenge. I wasn't consumed by jealousy or heartbreak. I had made my peace with who he was long before that phone lit up on the counter. I was simply gathering information and waiting for the moment when he would finally show his hand. The first time I met Cassidy Lawton, she was wearing a knockoff designer bag and Marcus's arm around her waist. It was his mother's birthday dinner, a monthly ritual at Eleanor Hartley's River Oaks Colonial, the kind of house where the silverware matched and the help knew to disappear. I had attended these dinners for 8 years, always feeling like a guest who had slightly overstayed her welcome. That night, Marcus walked in with Cassidy like she belonged there. "Everyone, this is Cassidy. She's been consulting on some new investment opportunities for the company." She was 27. All practiced smiles and highlighted hair. Her bag was designer or designed to look designer. I had spent enough years auditing luxury retail to spot the tells. The stitching was uneven, the hardware slightly off-color. But nobody else noticed. They were too busy fawning. Vincent always needed someone with real ambition, his mother Eleanor announced, squeezing Cassidy's hands like she was welcoming a long-lost daughter. Then she glanced at me with the thin smile I had grown so accustomed to. "Vivienne, be a dear and help Maria bring out the appetizers." I spent that dinner in the kitchen and at the margins, watching my husband parade his girlfriend in front of his family while everyone pretended not to see what was blindingly obvious. Eli sat beside me, his face scrunched up with the honest confusion that only children carry. "Mommy, who is that lady? Why is she sitting in your chair?" "She's nobody important, sweetheart." Cassidy laughed at something Marcus said, her hand resting on his sleeve. Eleanor beamed with approval, and I thought, the bag is not the only fake thing at this table. But Cassidy was not my enemy. She was a symptom. The real threat was the man she did not yet know was already bankrupt in more ways than one. 6 months before the final hearing, Marcus sat me down at the dining room table and delivered the news the way he delivered everything. Like a quarterly earnings report. "I want a divorce." No preamble. No apology. 5 words dropped between us like a contract termination. I had known this was coming. Had prepared for it, planned for it, almost welcomed it. But hearing him say it still felt like a door slamming shut on 8 years of my life. "I see," I said. "What are you proposing?" Marcus leaned back with the expression he used when negotiating with people he considered beneath him. "I want the house, the cars, the company. Everything we built together. I'll be keeping it all." "And what about me?" He shrugged. "You can keep Eli. I'm not interested in custody battles. The kid would slow me down." The kid? Our son. 6 years old. And his father couldn't even be bothered to use his name. Oh, I felt that one land somewhere deep in my chest. "You're sure?" I kept my voice completely steady. "You want everything? Every property, every account, every asset?" Marcus smiled, clearly pleased with his own generosity. "I'm being reasonable here, Vivienne. Most men in my position would fight you for the child just to avoid support payments. I'm letting you walk away with something. Something. My son. Like Eli was a consolation prize." I looked at my husband across the table and saw exactly what he saw when he looked at me. Nothing worth fighting for. "All right," I said quietly. "I'll need some time to review everything." Marcus's eyebrows lifted. He had expected tears. Maybe bargaining. Not this. What he did not know was that I had been waiting for exactly this moment for 3 years. And I was more than ready. "Are you still with me? Because right now is where I need you to stay close." I found a lawyer. And what she told me about page 47 of a 52-page document is going to change how you think about silence, strategy, and the most powerful sentence in Texas family law. The first meeting with Marcus's lawyer happened in a corner office downtown. All glass walls and leather chairs designed to make you feel small. Gerald Brennan was a silver-haired partner at one of Houston's most aggressive family law firms. The kind of man who charges $600 an hour and looks at opposing parties like they are inconveniences to be eliminated. Marcus had clearly chosen him for exactly that reason. I came alone. No lawyer. Just me and my 5-year-old Blazer, sitting across from 2 men who believed this meeting was a formality. Gerald slid a thick folder across the table. My client has prepared a comprehensive proposal for the division of marital assets. Pages of legal language detailing how Marcus would retain sole ownership of everything. The house, the Porsche, the investment accounts, Hartley Properties LLC and all its holdings. In exchange, I would receive my personal belongings and custody of Eli. No alimony. No portion of the business. Nothing. Marcus watched me read with that satisfied smirk. She doesn't need a lawyer, he said to Gerald, not even lowering his voice. She's just a part-time bookkeeper. She wouldn't understand any of this even if she tried. Gerald looked genuinely uncomfortable. Mr. Hartley, I really should advise that your wife retain independent counsel. Marcus waved his hand. Not necessary. Diana built nothing. She contributed nothing. Right, Vivienne? I closed the folder and met his eyes. I'll need a few days to review this and then I'll provide my response. Marcus blinked. He had expected immediate surrender. But he recovered, that arrogant smile sliding back into place. Take all the time you need. The outcome won't change. I walked out of that office and I was not a victim. I was a woman with a plan. Priya was the one who found Margaret Colton. She handles the ugliest divorces in Houston. Priya told me over coffee at a cafe far from anywhere Marcus might see us. And she wins. Not because she's ruthless. Because she's thorough. Margaret's office occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian building near Montrose, all warm wood and framed credentials. She was in her early 50s, silver-streaked hair, and eyes that assessed me the moment I walked through her door. Sit down, Mrs. Hartley. Tell me everything. So I did. 3 years of documentation spread across her desk in organized folders I had prepared myself. The debt, the forged signatures, the affair, Marcus's demands, the social pressure. All of it. Margaret reviewed every piece methodically. When she finished, she looked up at me with something I had not seen directed at me in a very long time. Respect. You've done remarkable work. Most clients come to me in crisis. You've come prepared for war. I'm not interested in war, I said. I'm interested in freedom. She set down her pen. Based on what you've shown me, you could fight for half of everything. Texas is a community property state. You have grounds. Half of $4.7 million in debt. Margaret smiled. The first real smile she had shown me. You understand the situation better than your husband does. I've had 3 years to understand it. He still thinks he's a millionaire. She leaned forward. Then let me ask you something. What do you actually want out of this divorce? I thought about Eli. About my savings account. About starting over with nothing but my son and my dignity. I want him to get exactly what he's asking for. Margaret studied me for a long moment. Then she reached for a thick legal textbook on her shelf and opened it to a marked page. Under Texas law, when marital assets are divided in a divorce, the debts attached to those assets can be assigned as well. It's called a liability assumption clause. She traced a line on the page. If one party agrees to take ownership of an asset, they can also be required to assume full responsibility for any liens, mortgages, or debts associated with it. So if Marcus wants everything, I said slowly, then Marcus gets everything, including the $4.7 million in liabilities currently attached to those assets. The key is ensuring the agreement is explicit, legally binding, and that he signs it voluntarily with full knowledge of what he's agreeing to. He won't read it carefully, I said. He never does. He already thinks he's won. That's his choice. Margaret closed the book. But we need to protect you legally. There's a document called a waiver of independent review. He'll be acknowledging that he had the opportunity to have everything examined by financial experts and chose not to. His lawyer will tell him to get an independent audit. Almost certainly. But will Marcus listen? I thought about my husband, his ego, his absolute certainty that he was the smartest person in any room. No, he would not. Then here is what we do, Margaret said, pulling out a fresh legal pad. We draft an agreement that gives him exactly what he has demanded. The house, the cars, the company, all of it. We include the liability assumption clause on page 47 of a 52-page document. And we wait for him to sign away his own future. And if he reads it, then you are no worse off than you were before. She met my eyes. But I don't think he will. Neither did I. The pressure came from multiple directions at once. Cassidy called me. Actually called, not texted, her voice wrapped in false sweetness. Diana, hi. I know this is awkward, but I just wanted to reach out, woman to woman. A pause for effect. Marcus and I are looking at some properties together, and the financing is getting complicated because of the divorce timeline. If you could just speed things along, it would make everything so much easier. Speed things along. Oh, I'll take that under consideration, Cassidy, I said. Then Marcus weighed in via email. He always documented himself, never understanding how those words might look later. Vivienne, my patience is running thin. If you don't sign within 2 weeks, I'll file a motion claiming deliberate delay. Gerald says I have grounds. Don't make this ugly. The threats continued. His lawyer sent formal letters. His mother left voicemails. But buried in Cassidy's phone call was something she probably shouldn't have mentioned. The financing was getting complicated, which meant Marcus needed assets on paper to secure new loans. He was planning to leverage the very properties that were already drowning in debt. He wasn't just greedy. He was desperate. I showed the email to Margaret. He's signing a waiver with this kind of documented pressure on record? She almost laughed. Vivienne, your husband is building our case for us. I just smiled. Every threat was another nail in his own coffin. Then Eleanor hosted a family meeting at her River Oaks dining room. The one with the crystal chandelier and the mahogany table that had witnessed 30 years of Hartley family power plays. Diana has agreed to accept Marcus's terms, Eleanor began, not even letting me speak. She'll sign the papers this week and we can all move forward. Marcus smiled magnanimously across the table. I always knew she'd come around. Vivienne understands she wasn't really equipped for this kind of negotiation. The cousins nodded. An uncle cleared his throat approvingly. I sat with my hands folded and said nothing, performing the defeated wife they expected. Across the room, Eli had appeared in the doorway watching, his small face confused and worried. I smiled at him gently and he disappeared back around the corner. What nobody in that room understood was that I hadn't surrendered at all. I had just made them believe I had. And that is the most powerful move on any board. The night before the final hearing, I sat alone in the small apartment I had rented after moving out of the house. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. A galley kitchen barely wide enough for 2 people to stand side by side. But it was clean and safe in ours. Mine and Eli's. My son had fallen asleep an hour earlier, his favorite stuffed elephant tucked under his arm. I watched him breathe for a few minutes, this small extraordinary person who had become the absolute center of my universe. Then I walked to the kitchen table where my documents were spread out. 3 years of preparation. All of it leading to tomorrow. I reviewed the final agreement one more time. 52 pages. The liability assumption clause on page 47, exactly as Margaret and I had planned. The waiver of independent financial review on page 49. Everything legal, everything transparent for anyone who cared to look. Marcus wouldn't look. I was certain of it. But certainty and reality are different things. And my hands trembled slightly as I closed the folder. On the counter I had laid out my outfit for tomorrow. Simple gray blazer. White blouse. Minimal jewelry. The only piece that truly mattered was the ring my grandmother had left me. A thin gold band with a tiny sapphire worth nothing financially but everything emotionally. The one asset Marcus had never thought to claim. Eli stirred in his sleep and mumbled something about dinosaurs. I walked back to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, brushing hair from his forehead. Whatever happens tomorrow, I whispered. We are going to be okay. The words were for him, but maybe I needed to hear them too. I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't afraid anymore. The morning of the hearing was unseasonably warm for Houston. 68 degrees, bright sun through wispy clouds. I stood outside the family courthouse feeling strangely completely calm. 3 years of waiting. And it had come down to this. One hearing. One signature. Margaret was already inside. Ready? She asked. Ready, I said. And I meant it. Through the narrow window of the courtroom door, I could see Marcus already seated at the respondent's table, Gerald Brennan beside him. Both men reviewing papers with the relaxed posture of people who believed they had already won. Marcus looked up when I entered. He smiled that confident, condescending smile I had seen 1,000 times. Vivienne, glad you could make it. I took my seat beside Margaret without responding. Let him smile. It wouldn't last. Cassidy had claimed a front row seat in the gallery, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was texting when I walked in but looked up long enough to give me a smile that was almost pitying. Beside her sat Eleanor, immaculate as always, her posture radiating the quiet certainty of a woman who had never been denied anything. They had come to witness Marcus's triumph. A front row seat to my humiliation. Judge Patricia Dawson entered from chambers. Gray hair pinned back, reading glasses perched on her nose, the energy of a woman who had heard every story and was not easily impressed. The agreement was read into the record with clinical detachment. The clerk's voice was flat and steady as she listed every asset I was relinquishing. The house, the Porsche, the Honda, investment accounts, Hartley Properties LLC and all its holdings. Cassidy squeezed Eleanor's arm, beaming. Judge Dawson looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Hartley, you understand that by signing this agreement, you are relinquishing your community property rights to these assets? I understand, Your Honor. And you've had adequate time to review this agreement with your counsel? I have, Your Honor. Then Gerald cleared his throat. Your Honor, I'd like it noted that my client was advised to obtain independent financial review of the marital assets and debts, but has elected to waive that review. Judge Dawson turned to Marcus. Mr. Hartley, is that accurate? You're waiving your right to have the financials independently verified before signing. Marcus didn't hesitate for even 1 second. I built this company, Your Honor. I know exactly what it's worth. I don't need some accountant telling me what I already know. Then please sign the waiver on page 49. Marcus took Gerald's pen, a Mont Blanc naturally, and signed with an actual flourish, like he was autographing something. I watched Gerald's face as Marcus handed back the pen. The attorney was flipping through pages rapidly. His eyes stopped. Page 47. The color drained from his face. Marcus, he whispered urgently. Marcus, wait. But Marcus was already turning to page 52, signing his name on the final line. Done, my husband announced, sliding the document toward the clerk. She signed. I signed. Let's wrap this up. You don't understand. Gerald was scrambling now, his composure crumbling in real time. Page 47. The liability assumption clause. The what? The debts, Marcus. The debts attached to the assets. Marcus laughed. He actually laughed. It's done. Move on. Judge Dawson raised her hand. Mr. Brennan, is there an issue? Gerald looked from Marcus to the judge to me, and I could see the exact moment he understood that nothing could be undone. Your Honor, my client may not have fully understood. Your client, Margaret interrupted, her voice smooth as still water, was asked directly if he wanted independent financial review. He declined. He signed the waiver voluntarily. The agreement is executed. What is everyone talking about? Marcus's voice had lost its confidence. Gerald handed him the document, his finger resting on page 47. I watched my husband's eyes move across the text. The party receiving marital assets hereby assumes full personal liability for all debts, liens, mortgages, and financial encumbrances attached to said assets, releasing the other party from any and all obligations related thereto. Marcus looked up at Gerald, then at me. This says I'm responsible for the debts. All 4.7 million, Margaret confirmed. As of your signature 30 seconds ago. From the gallery, Cassidy's voice cut through like glass breaking. 4 million? What? Marcus shot to his feet so fast his chair screeched against the floor. This is fraud. She tricked me. This whole thing, she can't do this. Mr. Hartley, sit down. Judge Dawson's tone left no room for anything. I'm not sitting down until someone explains how this is legal. Gerald, do something. Gerald Brennan stood frozen, the color completely gone from his face. You signed the waiver, Marcus. You specifically stated you knew what the assets were worth. You refused independent review because... Marcus spun toward me. You knew. You knew the whole time. You planned this. I didn't plan anything. My voice came out steady, calm. I just gave you exactly what you asked for. Your Honor. Marcus slammed his palm on the table. I demand this agreement be voided. I was deceived. You were not deceived, Mr. Hartley. Judge Dawson removed her reading glasses, fixing him with a look that silenced the entire room. The financial records of your company are public. The debts attached to your properties are matters of record. Your wife's attorney included full disclosure documentation in the agreement packet. You chose not to read it. I didn't know. You signed a waiver stating you didn't need to know. Her voice hardened just slightly. This court cannot protect parties from their own decisions. From the gallery, Cassidy's voice was high and panicked. Vincent, what does this mean? You told me you were a millionaire. You said we were going to buy a house, travel to Europe, start a family. Marcus reached toward her. Cassidy, listen. Don't touch me. She yanked her arm back. I can't believe I fell for this. You're not even a millionaire. You're worse than broke. You're negative broke. And then Eleanor stood. She gathered her purse with slow, deliberate movements. Her face was rigid with fury and something else. Something that looked like it might have been shame. Mom. Marcus reached toward her. Don't. One word. She walked out without looking back. The sound of her heels on the marble floor was the loudest thing in that room. Marcus stood in the wreckage of his victory, finally understanding that he hadn't won anything. He had just inherited his own destruction. I stood up. He turned to me. His face something I had never seen on him before. Stripped of everything. The confidence, the control, the performance of it all. You destroyed me, he whispered. You destroyed everything. I walked to the center of that courtroom, close enough that he could hear me clearly, far enough to maintain the distance I had been building for 3 years. No, Marcus. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you. I touched my grandmother's ring. For 8 years you told me I had no value, that I didn't understand business or money or anything important. You said I was just a part-time bookkeeper. You said Eli was a burden. You said I should be grateful you let me stay. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I'm not grateful. I'm free. I turned to Margaret, who was packing her briefcase with quiet efficiency. I don't hate you, I said to Marcus. I'm not even angry. I just refuse to let you define who I am for one more second. Vivienne. Wait. We can fix this. We can. No. There's nothing left to fix. I walked out of that courtroom. Steady footsteps on tile floor. Behind me I could hear Marcus calling my name. Gerald trying to calm him down. Cassidy demanding explanations. I didn't look back. I was already gone. Oh, that walk down that corridor. I will feel that in my chest for the rest of my life. 3 months after the hearing, Marcus's empire finished collapsing. I heard about it through Priya, who still had connections at several banks around the city. The details arrived in fragments over coffee, like quiet dispatches from a distant war. The house sold first. Not enough to cover the mortgage and the second lien Marcus had taken out without my consent. He walked away still owing $320,000 on a property he had already lost. The Porsche was repossessed 2 weeks later. The repo company came at 3 in the morning. According to a neighbor who watched the whole thing, Marcus stood in his bathrobe in the driveway screaming about lawsuits until someone threatened to call the police. Hartley Properties LLC filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in March. The commercial properties he had been so proud of went to auction for a fraction of their purchase prices. The remaining debt, nearly $3 million, stayed with him personally. He moved into a studio apartment in a complex off the highway. No doorman. No pool. No Rolex. From CEO to commission-only sales in 90 days, Priya said quietly across the table. That has to be some kind of record. I nodded, processing the information without the satisfaction I might have expected. He did this to himself, I said. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences. Priya squeezed my hand. You know what that is? That is the best kind of outcome. The kind you don't even have to engineer. Summer arrived. Our apartment had transformed over the months from a temporary refuge into something that actually felt like home. Eli's drawings covered every inch of the refrigerator. Plants crowded the windowsill. Herbs I had started growing to save money and kept because they made me happy. A second-hand couch that was somehow more comfortable than anything in Marcus's showcase house. I returned to accounting full-time in April, a mid-level position at a firm that valued competence over pedigree. By June, I had been promoted to senior accountant. My supervisor told me I had exceptional attention to detail. She had no idea I had developed that skill tracking a fraudulent husband for 3 years. Ha ha. Eli was thriving too. New school, new friends, a soccer team, chapter books at bedtime. He rarely asked about his father anymore. Not because I discouraged it. The questions had simply stopped mattering to him as much. Children know, even when we think they don't. They always know. Mom, watch me. He was attempting a cartwheel across the park that ended in a pile of giggles. I applauded from my bench and felt something I had genuinely forgotten was possible. Uncomplicated happiness. My phone buzzed. A notification from the community college. I had been accepted into the evening CPA certification program. Classes starting in September. What are you smiling about? Eli asked, running over and flopping down beside me. Good news, buddy. Mom's going back to school. Like me. Exactly like you. He thought about this very seriously for a moment. Can we celebrate with ice cream? Absolutely. We walked to the shop on the corner hand in hand, and I understood something that caught me completely off guard. This small life, this modest apartment, this ordinary job, this simple joy of a small hand in mine, this was everything I had never known I wanted. And it was entirely, completely, beautifully my own. Now I want to pause here right in the middle of this story and ask you something. Have you ever made a decision that everyone around you thought was completely irrational? Have you ever trusted yourself when absolutely no one else did? Have you ever been in a situation where the only person who could see your worth was you, and you had to hold on to that truth alone in the dark for longer than felt possible? Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Because that is really what this story is about. Not revenge. Not karma. Not watching someone get what they deserve, though I will be honest, watching Gerald flip to page 47 was something I will take with me to my grave. It is about the quiet voice inside you that knows the truth, even when the noise of everyone else's opinions tries to drown it out. For 3 years I listened to that voice. I planned. I prepared. I kept my mouth shut when everyone expected me to argue or beg or fall apart. And when the moment came, I was ready. The text came on a Tuesday evening, almost exactly 1 year after the final hearing. I need to talk to you. It's about Eli. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over delete. Then something, curiosity maybe, or something softer than that, made me type back. Public place. Tomorrow noon. The cafe on Westheimer. He agreed. I almost didn't recognize Marcus when he walked in. The tailored suits were gone, replaced by khakis and a polo shirt that hung looser than it should have. He had lost weight in the way that doesn't look healthy. His face was tired. The confidence had drained from his features like water from a bath. He sat across from me without ordering anything. You look good, he said. You look happy. I am. Silence stretched between us. He stared at his hands. I'm not here to apologize, he finally said. I know you wouldn't believe me if I did. I'm here because I've been in therapy for 6 months, and my therapist says I need to take accountability for what I did. To you. To Eli. I waited. I was a terrible husband and a worse father. The words came out like they physically hurt him. I treated you like you didn't matter. I treated our son like an afterthought. I was so obsessed with my own image that I couldn't see what I was destroying. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to see Eli. He met my eyes for the first time. Not to get back at you, not to prove anything. I want to try to be his father. A real father. If you'll let me. I studied the man I had once loved, searching for the arrogance I had learned to navigate for 8 years. I didn't find it. What I found instead was something broken trying to find its footing. I'll consider it, I said. On conditions. That night, after Eli was asleep, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years earlier. Scared. Uncertain. Convinced that silence was her only option and invisibility was her only safety. I thought about the woman I was now. Still quiet but no longer afraid. Still careful but no longer trapped. Marcus wanted back into Eli's life. 6 months ago I would have said no without hesitation. But something in his eyes today had been different. Something broken that was genuinely trying to rebuild itself. I could not heal him. That was not my job anymore. But Eli deserved to know his father, or at least the father Marcus was trying to become. So I set my conditions. Monthly therapy sessions verified by his counselor. Steady employment for a minimum of 6 months. Supervised visits first, progressing only if Eli felt comfortable. And one absolute rule: he would never speak about me negatively in front of our son. Not once. Not ever. Marcus agreed to everything. I pulled out the journal my own therapist had suggested I start and wrote a few lines by the glow of the city lights. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors. You choose who walks through them and when and on what terms. I chose to give Marcus a door. Whether he walks through it as a better man is entirely up to him. Either way, Eli and I will be okay. The tea had gone cold. I didn't mind. I sat a while longer, watching stars push through the light pollution, and let myself feel something I had almost forgotten was possible. Hope. September arrived with the smell of fresh notebooks. Eli started first grade the same week I started my CPA classes. We developed a routine, homework together at the kitchen table, him practicing his letters while I studied tax law. He usually beat me at memory games. Work was going well. My supervisor had mentioned the possibility of a partnership track. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that belonged entirely to me. Nobody's name on it but mine. Priya came by one evening with a good bottle of wine. Your ex-husband made a voluntary payment on one of his smaller debts last month, she said. First one since the bankruptcy. I took a sip. That's good for him. Aren't you curious about the rest? Not particularly. She studied me for a moment. You really are over it. I was over it the day I walked out of that courtroom. I looked around my modest apartment. The plants, the drawings, the evidence of a life built entirely from scratch and entirely on my own terms. I just didn't know what came next. Now I do. The next morning, Eli and I walked to school together, his hand warm in mine. Mom, he asked as we reached the gate. Are you happy? I knelt down to his level and adjusted his backpack straps and looked at his face. This face that I would do absolutely anything for. Yes, baby. I really am. He smiled that beautiful, honest, completely uncomplicated smile that makes everything in the world feel worth it, and ran toward his classroom. I stood watching until he disappeared inside. Then I turned and walked toward my future. Before I end this story, I want to share something my therapist helped me understand. Not just about Marcus but about myself and maybe about someone you know. Marcus was not born cruel. He was raised to believe that being a man meant being in control of everything and everyone around him. When his business started failing, he could not admit it. Not to me, not to his family, not even to himself. Because in his mind, admitting failure meant admitting he was not what he had always claimed to be. So he doubled down, took on more debt, projected more confidence. And when the pressure became unbearable, he found someone new, someone who did not yet know the truth, someone who could reflect back the image he so desperately needed to see. Understanding this does not excuse what he did, just explains it. And it helped me stop taking it personally. His cruelty was never really about me. It was about his own terror of being seen clearly. As for me, I had my own patterns to face. I avoided conflict because I had grown up watching my parents destroy each other with it. I thought silence meant peace. I did not realize I was confusing peace with paralysis. What I learned through all of this is that silence can be powerful. But only when it is a choice and not a cage. Planning is valuable. But so is knowing when the moment has finally arrived. And your worth does not depend on whether the people around you can see it. The people who underestimate you are building their own traps. You do not have to do anything but stay ready. So that is my story. A woman who was told she did not matter. Who spent 3 years in quiet, careful preparation, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to find out what she was actually made of. And I'll tell you what I found out about myself surprised me more than anything Marcus ever did. I found out I was stronger than the silence, smarter than the invisibility, and more capable than anyone in that room had ever taken the time to see. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. and share it with someone who might need to hear today that their silence is not weakness, their patience is not defeat, and the moment they have been quietly preparing for is coming. I am Vivienne Hartley. And wherever you are, whatever you are carrying, whatever room you are sitting in right now where someone has made you feel like you are not enough, I want you to hear this. You are not who they think you are. You just haven't had your page 47 yet. But you will.